Exposed, after a black CEO was kicked out of a luxury hotel, the incredible transformation happened. James Carter felt the cold wind whip around him as he stepped out onto the bustling streets of Chicago. His heart raced, not just because of the brisk chill in the air but from the excitement of the business conference around the corner. At 36, James was a successful black CEO, a beacon of hope for many in his vibrant community, working hard to carve a space for innovation and uplift those around him. But in a heartbeat, everything changed. The luxurious hotel stood towering over him like a fortress. It was supposed to be a haven for power players. Yet, as he walked through the polished doors, he felt an unwelcome sensation tugging at him, the weight of expectation. He remembered his mother's whispered words from earlier that day, urging him to rise above prejudice, and his father's urging to hold steadfast to dignity. But before he knew it, he was in the hotel lobby, a ripple of tension rising in the air. "Excuse me, sir," the manager said, brows furrowed with a feigned authority. "You'll have to leave." Stunned, James tried to explain. The laughter around him filled the room like an orchestra, a cruel symphony mocking his reality. "This isn't your kind of place." The words stung deeper than any blow. He was forcibly escorted out, humiliation crashing over him like a tidal wave. As he stood there on the sidewalk, heart racing, tears stung his eyes. The weight of systemic injustice pressed down on him. His pride shattered, he felt like a ghost haunting his own life. Yet amidst the chaos, something flickered in his chest, a fire igniting. He envisioned standing up, not just for himself but for others. But as he walked through his tight-knit neighborhood the next day, doubt shadowed him. Doing the right thing seemed impossible. He imagined organizing a charity event for social equity, a dream that felt almost too ambitious. "Where do I even start?" he muttered as he looked at the familiar streets he fought to empower. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." Despite his fears, he pressed on. The setbacks, sponsors backing out, the doubt from friends, it all felt like heavy chains. Then, unexpectedly, a spark reignited. A former employee, who knew the sting of discrimination, approached him, her eyes fierce with resolve. "Your fight is our fight," she said. That connection, their shared pain, amplified his determination. As the event loomed closer, whispers of hope fluttered through the air like the falling leaves around him. But just before the big day, an ominous shadow loomed on the horizon. Something threatened to derail everything he worked for. James stared into the uncertain future, gripped by both fear and furious resolve. Could he harness this community's strength? Or would he succumb to despair, the very forces he sought to dismantle dragging him down? The day of the charity event finally arrived, and the air was electric with anticipation. James stood in the center of the community center, his fingers trembling as he adjusted his tie. The walls were adorned with vibrant posters, each showcasing the names of sponsors who had believed in him despite the odds. This was at the moment he had worked tirelessly for. Around him, the buzz of laughter and chatter filled the room, blending with the aromas of delicious food from local vendors. Families, friends, supporters, people he had fought so hard to uplift came together, ready to show their support. Every friendly face reminded him that he was not alone in this struggle, they were all partners in the fight for equity. Yet, doubts crept into his mind. The shadows of the hotel incident loomed large. What if they see me as just a token? James whispered to himself, brushing off the fear like a stubborn grain of sand. What if this effort falls flat? But as he surveyed the room, something shifted. He noticed the smiles, the unity, the determination in the air, and he felt his heart swell with pride. He took to the stage, his palms slick with sweat as he gripped the microphone. "Thank you for being here," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "This event isn't just about raising money, it's about creating a movement." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. James poured his heart out, sharing his experience, the pain of being ostracized, but reframing it into a story of resilience. "We are more than our struggles. We are innovators, dreamers, and fighters. Together, we can light a path toward a brighter future." The room erupted in applause, the sound a mighty wave that washed over him, rejuvenating his spirit. But just as James felt he was soaring, a familiar face appeared at the back of the room. It was Maria, the hotel manager who had escorted him out that fateful day. She stood there, her face a mask of skepticism, arms folded across her chest. James's heart sank. Hadn't he transformed this moment? He thought of his speech, the commitment he had shown. Would she expose him? Before he could dwell on that thought, the crowd vibe shifted. People were gathering, pulling together. A sense of community blossomed before him, and despite his rising anxieties, he sensed others standing with him in this shared struggle. The energy fueled him. It wasn't about the past, but the present and future they all yearned to build together. Then, someone shouted out, urging Maria to join them. "We can't let anyone sit on the sidelines. We need all hands on deck." This scattered call slowly morphed into a collective chant, and the atmosphere swirled with hope. With every passing moment, James's doubts collided with an undeniable truth: the hotel incident was not the end of his story, but a chapter in a much larger narrative. Still, he felt the weight of uncertainty. Would Maria pull back and let the shadows take hold of what he had achieved? As the applause reverberated, a decision loomed before him. Would he reach out and invite her into this movement, or cling to the bitterness of the past? The very fate of their future hung in the balance, and at that moment, James knew he had to take a leap of faith. Would the courage he found in his community be enough to transform not just his future, but hers as well? James's heart raced in rhythm with the crowd as the chant grew louder, reverberating against the walls of the community center. "All hands on deck! All hands on deck!" The energy surged like a wave, and it was intoxicating. He turned to the audience and cleared his throat, summoning a deep breath. He couldn't just let this moment pass, he needed to embrace it. "Maria!" he called out, raising his voice to cut through the murmur of excitement. Everyone turned to look at her. "We need you here with us. We're building something new, something powerful, and we want you to be a part of it." The room fell silent. Maria's expression shifted as she processed his words. There was surprise, maybe even a flicker of appreciation, but it was still cloaked in doubt. James could feel the tension, it mirrored the weight of his own insecurities. Would she step forward or retreat into her safe shadows? He stepped down from the stage and began walking toward her. Each step felt like a leap into the unknown. What if she refused him? What if the crowd turned their backs? Yet, that feeling of community surged again, pushing him onward. "Maria, I know things haven't been easy between us," he continued, vulnerability spilling into his voice. "But holding on to that pain won't help us move forward. We need unity, especially from those who once stood on the sidelines. Everyone here deserves a chance to make things right." The tension was palpable. The murmurs of the crowd ebbed like a tide waiting for action. "Think about it," he urged. "Isn't that what this event is about? Second chances? We're a community that believes in transformation, and I'm standing right here, offering you that same opportunity." Maria's arms gradually uncrossed. Her brow furrowed deep in thought. James sensed the critical moment hanging in the air. Would she accept this bridge he was offering? Would the past dissolve to create a new path? Someone in the crowd shouted encouragement. "You got this, Maria." The warmth of the support seeped into the atmosphere, a reminder that they were all in this fight together. Finally, After what felt like an eternity, Maria took a step forward, her expression softening. As she opened her mouth, her voice trembled like the fluttering leaves outside. I never realized how much my actions impacted you. I'm sorry. I want to be part of this change. Together. Cheers erupted like fireworks, filling the room with an explosion of hope. James's heart swelled, a mix of relief and elation rushed through him. A bond was beginning to form, not just between him and Maria, but extending to everyone present. As they stood side by side, a silent agreement unfurled. They were both learning to bridge divides, and they were neither alone. But just as optimism filled the room, the door to the back of the center swung open. A group of local journalists entered, cameras flashing and clicking, pulling attention like moths to a flame. What happens next? James thought, his pulse quickening again, driven by the thrill of unpredictability. This newfound alliance was about to be broadcasted to the world, and with the media now focused on them, he couldn't help but wonder, what challenges would this exposure bring? He exchanged a glance with Maria, a silent agreement passing between them. This was only the beginning. As the journalists approached, the question lingered in the air, heavy with potential: how would they navigate this newfound attention together? The atmosphere in the community center shifted, electric and charged with anticipation. James felt butterflies dance in his stomach as he faced the swarm of journalists, their cameras darting like fireflies. Every click felt like the snap of a rubber band, tightening more and more around his chest. He made a promise to Maria, to the crowd, and now that was out there for everyone to see. Just be yourself, he whispered under his breath, the words barely audible above the excitement thrumming through the air. Maria stood beside him, her presence a steadying force, and he felt like they were two warriors prepared for battle. Together, they had the chance to make a statement, a declaration of unity that went beyond themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. A woman with a sleek bob haircut called out as she stepped onto the stage, holding a microphone. She was clearly the leader of the reporters, her sharp gaze sweeping the room to take in the scene. We've gathered here today to discuss a significant moment of change in this community. James glanced at Maria. Her lips were pressed together, a mixture of excitement and fear flickering across her face. Would their conversation come out the way they hoped? Would they be seen as genuine or merely another story in the news cycle? The reporter continued, spotlighting James and Maria as if they were the protagonists of a movie. We witnessed a powerful moment tonight. A call for unity, a plea for understanding. James, can you tell us what inspired you to reach out to Maria? James swallowed hard. He could feel the eyes of the room, the supportive faces of his neighbors, the curious looks of the journalists, and the siblings of the community who'd fallen silent for too long. It's simple, he started, his voice shaky but firming into resolve. I believe that healing begins with conversation. We've all faced our share of struggles, but it's about overcoming them together. The room buzzed. That was real. Authentic. Maria took a deep breath, her eyes brightening. In our divisions, we lost sight of what really matters. It's easy to hold on to past grievances. I almost didn't step forward today, but what James said made me realize we all have a part in this change. The journalist scribbled notes, capturing every word as if they were gold. James felt buoyed by her words. They had turned a potential disaster into a narrative about second chances and resilience. As they spoke, James caught glimpses of the crowd, he saw nods of agreement, smiles spreading. It felt like they were all in sync, an orchestra of human experience, each note resonating through the hearts of those gathered. But just as the energy soared higher, a gust of wind swept past, pulling James's focus to the entrance. A tall figure lingered just inside the doorway, glancing nervously around. James squinted. Could it be? Excuse me, he interrupted the reporter's next question, taking a step back from the podium. Who's that? He pointed. The murmurs rose again, the atmosphere shifting as everyone turned. The figure took a step closer, revealing a familiar face. It was Marcus, the very man who had been pushed out of the luxury hotel, the one whose voice had previously been silenced. Fear and uncertainty draped over James like a heavy blanket. What did his appearance mean? Was this a moment of reckoning or a tear in their newly threaded fabric of community? James's heart raced as all eyes shifted, a torrent of unspoken questions whispering around the room. What would he say? What did Marcus want? And would this throw everything they built into chaos? Without realizing, James had stepped back into the spotlight, his mind racing with possibilities. The tension soared. What transformation awaited with Marcus's arrival? Would their solidarity withstand this unexpected challenge? James's breath hitched in his throat as he watched Marcus cross the threshold, uncertainty shadowing his features. The room felt smaller now, the air thick with unspoken tension. He could see the conflicting emotions swirling on Maria's face: hope, doubt, and a hint of fear. James, Maria mouthed, her eyes wide, but he was already stepping forward. He instinctively wanted to bridge the gap between them. "Hey, Marcus!" James called, his voice surprisingly steady against the backdrop of tentativeness. The murmurs in the crowd hushed as they strained to hear the conversation that was about to unfold. Marcus looked more fragile than James remembered. In that moment, he wasn't the man they labeled a disruption. He was just a fellow human, undoubtedly burdened by too many expectations and hurts. "What are you doing here?" James pressed, trying to mask the nervousness swirling beneath his surface. "I came to speak." Marcus's voice was low but resolute. He seemed to draw strength from the crowd, from the possibility that he could finally share his side. James glanced back, desperate for Maria's support. She stepped up beside him, her determination rekindled. "If you want to talk, we're all listening," she encouraged, gesturing toward the audience that had become a sea of intrigued faces. Taking a deep breath, Marcus approached the podium. The measured rhythm of his heartbeat echoed like a drum in James's ears. "I was going to stay silent to let the story paint me as the villain. But I know now that silence won't change anything," he began, his voice gaining strength. James exchanged looks with Maria again, they both felt a heartbeat of hope pulse through the crowd. "I didn't just lose my job that day, I lost my voice," Marcus continued, gripping the podium tightly. "People need to understand that what happened to me was more than just egregious behavior by a few individuals. It's about larger systematic issues that have plagued our community for years: racism, injustice, and the relentless cycle of exclusion." The rawness of his words struck a chord, eliciting murmurs of agreement. James felt a knot in his chest loosening. Was Marcus opening up just as they had? "I could have responded with anger and hate," Marcus went on, looking directly into the crowd, "but I realized I had to turn that pain into purpose. That's why I'm here, hoping we can start a dialogue instead of just pointing fingers." James's heart swelled. This was exactly the type of conversation they needed: raw, honest, and rooted in shared humanity. He caught Maria's eye, her expression mirrored his own blend of relief and encouragement. "Let's peel back these layers together," James exclaimed suddenly, his excitement spilling into the crowd. "We've all been hurt, but we can choose to heal instead of spiral into anger." The initial tension began to dissipate, and the atmosphere shifted toward something more transformative. The audience leaned in, engaged, drawing in this collective new possibility. "Can you imagine what we might achieve if we stand together?" Maria spoke up, bold as she shared her own moment of realization. "We need to share our struggles, our stories. That's where understanding begins." The crowd stirred, a ripple of dawning awareness washing over them. They were all part of something larger, a movement for change that stretched beyond just two individuals. But just as a wave of hope washed over them, uncertain glances flitted back toward Marcus. Would he take their words to heart? Would he really become a part of this community that had once cast him aside? Marcus paused, the weight of eyes upon him. Together, we can break these cycles, he said, a new fire igniting in his eyes. But before they could fully embrace that unity, the unmistakable sound of sirens wailing outside punctured the moment. The crowd perked up, a sense of dread creeping back into the atmosphere. What now? James muttered, heart sinking as he exchanged worried glances with Maria. What storm was looming just beyond their fragile oasis of hope? And as that realization settled over the room, Marcus's expression shifted. James felt the tension seep back in. Whatever was unfolding outside, it threatened to draw them out of the moment they had just forged. Would they hold on to this budding unity, or were they about to be pulled apart by circumstances once again? The wailing sirens grew louder, echoing against the walls, pulling everyone's attention back to the present. James felt the weight press down on him, that unmistakable heaviness of reality crashing into their hopeful moment. He turned to Maria, who stood frozen beside him, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "Do you think it's about us?" she whispered, panic creeping into her voice. Before he could answer, a security officer surged through the crowd, followed by a couple of other uniformed officers. The atmosphere shifted again, this time charged with tension mixed with anxiety. They were all on edge, the earlier sense of unity dissolving like mist. "Everyone, please remain calm," the security officer called out, his voice firm yet strained. "There seems to be a disturbance outside, but we have it under control." "Disturbance?" Marcus echoed, his brow furrowing. "What kind of disturbance?" James watched as the crowd began to murmur amongst themselves, whispers of confusion and concern mounting. He could feel the pulse of the room quickening, the communal heart rate rising in sync with the rising uncertainty. "It's probably nothing," James said, trying to comfort both Maria and himself. "But we can't just stand here." "Maybe we should check it out," Marcus suggested, stepping away from the podium. "If it is affecting us, we need to know." Without thinking, James reached out, grabbing Marcus's arm. "Wait, I don't think that's wise. We have something important building here, and we can't let fear take that away. Let us stay united right now." Marcus looked between James and Maria, his expression conflicted. "But what if there are people out there who need our help? We can't just ignore it." His voice rose, echoing the tension in the room. The security officer shook his head. "I assure you, we have it managed. There's nothing for you to worry about inside. Your safety is our priority." But James could see that the crowd was shifting. Their body language spoke volumes: uncertainty, fear, and an urgent desire to know. He felt the urgency to act pulse through him. This was the moment they needed to decide if they would allow circumstances to define them or push through together. "Let us stay, but let us work together," Maria spoke up, her voice cutting through the rising noise. "Whatever happens out there, we can't lose sight of what we just started." "Agreed," James added, trying to rally the room. "How about we focus here?" He glanced at Marcus, and together they stepped back toward the podium, looking for solidarity in each other's resolve. As they turned back to the crowd, Marcus's voice softened. "We can still create a space for our conversation, for healing while we stay aware of what's happening out there. Let us hear from each other." The audience hesitated, glancing toward the doors, the distant sound of chaos drawing them. The air was thick with doubt. What were they really willing to fight for? "Sometimes, the greatest changes happen in the face of uncertainty," Marcus said, his voice steadying. "Let's channel this energy into understanding, into awareness. Who's with us?" James felt the tide shift again as some in the crowd began to nod, others murmured in agreement. They were beginning to reclaim that unity, but the sirens were still echoing, still a reminder of the troubles outside. Just then, the doors burst open again, and a tall figure stepped in. Startled faces turned toward the newcomer, who quickly scanned the room. A high-profile journalist, known for covering controversial stories, had entered. The collective tension reached a new height as he stepped forward, clutching his microphone, eyes snapping toward Marcus. "What's the story here?" he asked, his voice slicing through the room. "Isn't it time the world knows your fight?" James's heart raced at the sudden intensity of the moment. Would they open up, exposing their vulnerabilities to the world, or hold the dialogue close to home? This wasn't just about Marcus anymore, it was about them all. The true fight loomed ahead, and they stood on the precipice of something immense. As all eyes focused on Marcus, the question hung in the air. Would they share their truth, or would fear dominate this pivotal moment? Marcus felt the weight of the moment crash over him. Every eye in the room was on him, waiting for something, anything, to come from his mouth. The journalist stood ready, microphone raised, as if he were heralding the arrival of something monumental. Marcus began, his voice breaking slightly. He'd rehearsed countless speeches, all with different audiences in mind, but none felt as critical as this one. "This isn't just a story," he finally stammered out, glancing nervously at Maria and James. "This is about our lives. Our struggles." The crowd leaned in, breath held, eager to hear the truth. Maria stepped closer to Marcus, her presence a quiet support. "We all have stories," she declared, her voice gaining strength. "This is our chance to share who we really are. No fear. No shame." A murmur rippled through the crowd. People shifted, nodding, some even calling out in agreement. The journalist jotted down notes, the tension palpable in the air. James felt hope threading through him again, but fear was not easily cast aside. What if sharing their truths led to backlash? What if they were misunderstood? "Every single person here has been affected," Marcus continued, "but many of us are scared to speak up. We've been silenced by stereotypes, by a lack of trust, and sometimes even by our loved ones. But that ends now." As the words tumbled out, an odd sense of relief washed over him. It felt good to say it aloud, to voice their fears and dreams. To be kicked out of that hotel, it's not just about one person, it's about all of us who've ever felt unwelcome, Marcus said, his heart racing. The weight of his words seemed to lift the heaviness in the room. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Yeah. We need to make our voices heard." The atmosphere shifted, the collective energy morphing into a charge of empowerment. James squeezed Maria's hand, feeling her warmth encouraging him to step forward too. "And maybe," he added, letting conviction fill his lungs, "if we reveal our stories, we can break down those walls. People need to see us for who we truly are, not just their assumptions." Their voices lifted, weaving together, each contribution fueling the fire. The sirens outside felt distant now, fading into a mere background noise against the rising tide of collective strength within those walls. The journalist caught every nuance, every emotional exchange, his notebook quickly filling with ideas that transcended staged stories. "You just might have a story that the world needs to see," he said, looking from Marcus to James, back to Maria, the fervor growing in his own voice. "Let us be real," Marcus shouted to the crowd. "We're tired of just surviving. It's time we thrive. Let us demand respect, dignity, and truth." The room erupted into applause, chants of yes, merging with the sounds of approval. James felt an overwhelming rush of emotion and pride. This was their moment to seize. But just as their spirit soared, a loud crash cut through the excitement. The doors burst open yet again. An officer entered, breathless and eyes wide with alarm. "We need to evacuate. It's getting worse outside." The cheers faltered, confusion and fear re-emerging as the crowd looked around. Just when they were on the verge of something transformational, the threat outside loomed closer. "Stick together," Marcus shouted, rallying them. "Whatever happens, we will stand united." They were energized, yet uncertainty hung thick in the air. Would they face whatever chaos awaited, or would they retreat? James faced Maria, a silent question sparking between them. What would they choose in this critical moment? "Are we ready?" he whispered, knowing the answer could define their journey ahead. The officer's voice rang through the room, cutting through the warmth and unity they had built. Panic threatened to unravel their hard-won resolve. Heartbeats quickened and breaths combined into a chorus of uncertainty. Evacuate? Why? Someone shouted from the back, and there was a flurry of whispers. Fear lingered in the air, thick and suffocating, but a spark of defiance flickered in the corner of Marcus's heart. He stepped forward again, lifting his hand, calm rising in his voice. Whatever is happening out there, we can't allow it to tear us apart. We've just found our voice. Don't let it go. James looked at Maria. Her gaze was fierce, determination flickering in her dark eyes. We can't let fear stop us now, she whispered, the weight of those words settling onto his shoulders like armor. The officer shifted nervously, glancing toward the open doors where shadows danced outside, shrouded in mystery. It's not safe. You need to leave now. Then let us leave together, Marcus urged, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. We can't turn back now after everything we've just said. We've got to take this energy outside, into the world where it matters most. As they gathered themselves, the crowd shifted closer, hearts aligned in a shared purpose. Collective murmurs turned into shouts of resolve. Together. Echoed through the room. Together. Came the response, louder now, the spirit of camaraderie igniting something fierce in each of them. Through the confusion, emotions boiled, trepidation intertwined with a blossoming sense of purpose. They all knew the risks that lay ahead, but was it not more dangerous to stand still, to remain silent? On 3, Marcus said, glancing at James and Maria, who nodded firmly, their resolve strengthening with every heartbeat. 1, 2. The crowd fell silent, focused, eyes fixed on whatever future awaited. 3. Together they surged forward, flowing like water through the doors. The sunlight was blinding, harsh and glaring, with the world outside still wrapped in chaos. Sirens polluted the air, a cacophony of anguish and urgency. As they stepped outside, the scene that greeted them was a jarring contrast to the unity they had felt inside. People stood in clusters, fear evident on their faces, as if they were awaiting a storm. Just down the way, dark clouds loomed not only in the sky but within the hearts of a crowd that awaited answers. What is going on? Marcus shouted, raising his voice over the din. He was met with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Then someone at the front, a familiar face, stepped forward. It was Lucas, a friend who had faced many battles himself. Marcus, he called, it's not good. The protest has turned ugly. Some people, they want to silence us again. Not if we talk. Marcus replied passionately. We're not backing down. Not now. Cheers erupted from behind, voices swelling in agreement. But lurking just beyond their clamor was a sense of dread. The air felt charged, as if too many eyes were watching, waiting for a reason to pounce. A chant rose from the crowd, fierce and unwavering, "We are strong. We are united." Together they echoed it, each voice a note in a powerful symphony. Just as the chant reached its height, an ominous sound halted their soaring spirits, a loud crack that split the air like thunder. "Get down!" A voice shouted, the world suddenly shifting into chaos. With hearts racing, a new wave of uncertainty crashed over them. What did this mean for their movement? Would they stand firm, or were they about to be swept into a storm of turmoil? Answers felt out of reach, waiting just beyond their courage. The crowd jolted at the crack, confusion and fear racing like wildfire. Faces twisted in shock as they dropped to the ground, scrambling for safety. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest, the chaos around him fading into the background noise of distant sirens and muffled cries. "Stay together!" he yelled, extending a hand to James and Maria, who knelt beside him. Their eyes met, each reflecting a determined resolve that pushed back the fear creeping in. "Lucas!" Maria shouted. "Where are you?" Imitating a flame drawing the dark, Lucas emerged from the shadows, pulling himself closer with the strength of desperation. "Over here!" he shouted back, his voice cutting through the mayhem, pulling them back into focus. As they climbed back to their feet, the atmosphere crackled with raw energy. The crowd felt alive, a living, breathing entity, trembling with purpose, even as doubt swirled like the dust kicked up by their urgency. "Look!" Marcus pointed. Up ahead, beyond the press of bodies, a line of police had formed, shields flashing ominously under the unforgiving sun. The tension escalated, thick and tangible, wrapping tighter around each person. Staring defiantly at the law enforcement barrier, Marcus could hardly ignore the tightness in his throat. "We can't back down. We need to stand our ground," he urged, his voice nearly lost amidst the growing storm of anxiety. Maria squeezed his arm, steady and strong. "Together," she echoed, a lifeline for his wavering spirit. But just then, a metallic clang cut through the air, followed by the sharp crack of a baton striking the ground. Several protesters jumped back, realizing that their peaceful expression of unity might not be welcomed. "Move back!" an officer barked, authority laced with intimidation, and the crowd wavered, uncertainty gnawing at them like a hungry beast. "We will not be silenced!" Marcus shouted again, every word dripping with urgency. The crowd absorbed his fire, their fear meeting with an iron resolve. "Not silenced. Not afraid." They chorused, the chant rising defiantly, their voices lifting against the sound of chaos like a beacon in darkness. A few voices near the back faltered, but the strength of the front surged forward, pulling them all together. The officers looked uneasy, their lines faltering for just a heartbeat, and that small crack sparked hope in Marcus. What if they stayed? What if their song refused to fade? Suddenly, another crack echoed through the air, a flash of something electric, followed by panicked screams. The reality of the moment crashed down, and fear gripped Marcus like icy fingers wrapping around his heart. "Fall back!" shouted another officer, but Marcus could see that it wasn't just the police that were scared. It was the people around him. Panic threatened to rip them apart. "Listen!" Marcus shouted, "we need to remember who we are. They might try to divide us, but we've been united too long to give in now." His voice rang out over the tide of unease, striking a chord. Around him, something shifted, people looked up, and determination sparked anew. Yet as the atmosphere thickened with uncertainty, hidden forces lurked in the shadows, silently orchestrating turmoil. What was about to erupt? Were they truly ready to face whatever it was that threatened the fragile hope they built? With every beat of his heart, Marcus felt the weight of their future hanging by a thread. Would courage be enough, or was fear destined to win? The air buzzed with tension, a thick blanket of anticipation rolling over the crowd like a storm cloud. But as panic welled, something extraordinary happened. "Together!" Marcus shouted again, more emphatically this time. The chant soared, fueled by the collective heartbeat of those surrounding him. "Together! Together! Together!" The words became an anthem, rising above the fear. James felt the pulse of the crowd in sync with his own. They were not afraid. They were not alone. The collective energy shimmered like an electric current, pushing fear away and bringing purpose to the forefront. "It's not just us," James exclaimed, his voice cutting through the static, a beacon in the storm. "This is for everyone who has ever been silenced. We will not be boxed in. We're here to change this narrative." With those words, something shifted in the crowd's demeanor. People straightened their backs, hearts pumping courage, realizing that this moment transcended their individual struggles. Marcus, James, and Maria stood at the front, feeling the strength of this gathering swell behind them. Then, Marcus took a step forward, determination etched across his face. "We deserve to be heard," he declared, locking eyes with the officers standing in a line like a wall between them and their pursuit. "We're here for justice, for understanding, and for every person who has ever felt unseen. You will not silence us. And in that moment, the officers hesitated. The tension that had gripped their formation was palpable, and the crowd began to push forward, emboldened by the sheer force of Marcus's bravery. Just as they closed the distance between themselves and the officers, sirens became a distant hum, fading into the background of their shared chant. Together, they surged forward, a tide of humanity demanding attention, stability, and respect. Keep going. Maria rallied, her voice powerful against the chaos. Let them see us united. We're more than mere stories. We're a movement of change. With every chant, shoulders squared, fists raised, and hearts laid bare, they continued moving forward. But instead of retaliation, the officers' expressions softened. It was as if they realized that this wasn't merely a protest, it was a call for empathy, understanding, and human connection. And as the first rays of realization broke through the clouds of dread, one officer stepped forward. He lowered his shield, eyes softened with understanding. His voice broke through the roar. This is not what I signed up for. We want to protect you, not oppress you. Let us talk. The air shimmered with astonishment as the crowd paused, momentarily silent in disbelief. People exchanged glances, the shared energy transforming once again, this time into hope for a dialogue that had been long overdue. Let us listen to each other, Marcus said, the resonance of his voice igniting belief in the miraculous. We can bring change, but only together. And with that, the world outside shifted. Gone were the rigid lines of division, replaced by a circle of humanity gathered in the name of understanding. Conversations sprang up, barriers began to dissolve. One by one, officers leaned in, listening intently as voices mingled, molding a fresh narrative built on empathy. James felt a surge of emotion, a tidal wave of hope washed over him. They had turned fear into resolution. They had transformed anxiety into strength. Each story shared became a stepping stone toward a brighter future. Yet as hope blossomed, Marcus caught a glimpse of someone lurking at the back of the crowd, Maria's expression shifting to concern. He turned, seeing the same vulnerability reflected in the faces of his community. The journey remained fragile, the race toward equality was far from finished. But they had proven something immense this day, for every obstacle laid in their path, every fear that threatened to silence them, together, they could rise. In that moment of unity, James smiled with a full heart, tears mixing with radiant joy. They had embraced their human connection, binding themselves not just to each other but to every voice seeking change. This was their chance to reconnect, to reforge a society built on compassion instead of division. As the crowd flooded with conversation, reclaiming their history lost to shame, James, Marcus, and Maria stood side by side, knowing they had become beacons of that very movement they fought for. As they embraced this new beginning, something whispered in the air, particles of change ready to cascade and unfurl like petals after the rain. And just like that, the narrative was transformed. Believe in the power of community, my friends. This is your moment to support this journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. You need to share your thoughts in the comments, let your feelings shine through. If this inspired you, don't wait not even one more second to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your support makes all the difference. Together, we can continue to foster this change. Like now to feed the algorithm and spread the light.